This is the Sufficient Podcast, your go-to place to living your soul's truth with courage, trust, and freedom. This is your pathway to letting go of disempowerment and connecting to the divine within. I'm Noha, your host and guide, and I am a spiritual teacher, coach, healer, TEDx speaker, and spiritual retreat leader. I guide people like you, the lovers of the divine, of consciousness, spiritual seekers, and of course, conscious entrepreneurs. Those of you who I know desire to live a more meaningful life with deep love, unconditional trust, ecstatic pleasure, and also radiant abundance. It is right here where we reflect out loud on matters of the heart and soul, and of course, with practical applications towards a fulfilling and authentic life. So let's take a deep breath in as we center ourselves, and let's begin. Welcome back to the Sufficient with Noha podcast. Today I want to speak a bit about application. Last week we spoke about love, unconditional love, divine love, and it veered into getting to know oneself in order to love oneself, and also getting to know oneself and love oneself is getting to know God and getting to love God within, right? So I'm one of those people that when I am speaking about something, I feel incomplete when I haven't given a how-to, right? I'm someone who survives on not just being inspired, but also now tell me how or show me how. And so I kind of teach and speak in the same format as well. Whatever it is that I feel I need, I'm going to bring to my audience because I feel that's what they need as well. So today I want to do a bit of discussion around how-tos, right, on the topic of the last episode. And if you recall, the last episode really went around knowing oneself and thereby loving oneself, right? So I'm wanting to kind of delve into the application of getting to know how to love oneself and the application of how to get to know oneself. And I think I'm going to start off with the all-important question. What brings you joy? What brings you the unbridled, the uninhibited, the soul-lighting joy? What is that for you? Now you'd be surprised if you know the answer to this, to what brings you joy. You may be surprised at how many people actually don't know what brings them joy. And often when I find that people who don't know what brings them joy are those of us whom have centered our entire lives on outcomes, on getting on with it, on doing the next thing, on moving, on working, on earning, on seeing to the family, on all of those things. And they rarely or seldomly take time to truly sit with themselves for a number of reasons. A number of reasons why people don't sit with themselves is not always because they don't have the time, right? Time is, again, a construct of our own. We're all given the same amount of 24 hours every day. More often or not, people who are sat in that position of not knowing their joy and not having the time to discover their joy, it's probably sometimes because they don't know how, right? They don't know how to discover their joy, and therefore they feel stuck, and therefore they feel paralyzed or maybe immobile, right? So the cure, though, if I may use that word, is to discover more about oneself slowly, right? To start making that time. In fact, I had this discussion last night with a friend, and he was saying to me, no, he's going to choose a day in the week, like a Saturday morning, where he's not working, and he's going to dedicate that to, the time to get to know himself. And I was, wow, that is okay. Today is Tuesday, so you're leaving this till Saturday. You are quite frankly wanting to schedule time in order to get to know yourself. So I said, why not steal the moment right now? Why not take out 10 minutes right now? Why not create that time or that moment right now? Right? Because for the more we put off, the more we schedule something for later, the more we're placing structure around something that is so fluid, so flowing, right? There's no structure in the river. There's no structure in the ocean, right? Well, in its parameters and so on. So why would you place structure in your fluid life of getting to know yourself, right? Yeah, your structure could be in your routines of your daily, things that you need to do, your contemplations and even your work environment, for example. You start and you end at a certain time, perhaps, or you have children to take to school at a given start time and end time. You have certain things, bills that needs to be paid at certain times. So there's already enough structure almost dictated to us already in our lives. Why would we want to have our entire lives actually placed in that same mold, right? It leaves for rigidity, and when we have rigidity, we are boxed. And when we are boxed, there's often very little opportunity or little opportunity taken to move outside of the box, because we become so accustomed to the parameters, we become so accustomed to the plan, we become so accustomed to the strategy. And I'm here to say, perhaps we should, let go in certain areas of our lives of the structure, of the plan, of the strategy, and move away from that and say, what is something that I've never done before, or something that I do that I can do differently, and find out if I like it, right? The people who do know what their joy is often know what their joy is, but the question that comes after that is, do you do more of what brings you joy? Do you follow what brings you joy? Or are we using excuses that, I don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the opportunity, or I don't have the gap, or I don't have this, or I don't have that? Those are physical and tangible resources, right? Sometimes we even have the emotional excuses or the emotional resource excuse, like I don't have the courage, I don't have the worthiness, I don't have the intelligence, I don't have the wisdom, or whatever may come with that. All of these things are attainable, right? So there really is little to no excuse to following your joy at least a few times in your week or your month or even your year, right? I still marvel at how often, we all work for an entire year and slog it and save and do all of those wonderful things that, again, the society that we live in has dictated for us, so that we can take a break from work and reality to go and escape onto a holiday, right? If, traveling brings you joy, then find out how you can do it more often in your current life, right? Either through your work, through your business, through your children, if that is something that brings you joy. It's something that completely turned my life around when my mentor, Dr. John DeMartini, said one day in a class, he said, find what lights you up, find what you truly value in this life and what you absolutely love, and find a way to get paid to do it, right? So in other words, to not be restricted by your day-to-day, and actually figure out a way of how you can still earn a living while doing what you love, so that you love what you do and do what you love, right? I've always loved travel. And before it was a faraway dream, it was a vision, rather, that I wanted to travel. But I always needed to work first in order to save up, in order to go and travel. Or I needed to sign up for programs, which I did in the past, and I would attend the business conference or the business retreat that happened in another country, because that registered in my mind as a way to travel. Until one day I realized, but hold on a second, why can't I take my coaching and the way in which I teach people, why can't I take that across the world? Why can't I travel with people and see the world and get paid to do it? And so that's exactly what I do today. In part, of course. I do spiritual retreats where I host retreats and now tours as well in other countries. I've done them in Bali. I've now done Turkey recently in this year, May 2024. I intend doing Turkey again. I intend doing the south of France and the south of Spain. So there are many opportunities to do what you love and love what you do, and to have more of those joyful experiences. All we have to do is start asking quality questions. All we have to do is to start asking ourselves, if this is what I love, what are all the ways that I can get to do what I love and still live the life that I need to live or desire or deserve to live? I.e. still pay my bills, i.e. still have family connections, if that's important to you. So the question when I started out with what brings you joy, what do you absolutely love, what inspires you, what lights you up? That is a question of discovery. Because the more you start discovering what it is that you truly love, what you truly love doing, what you truly love experiencing, you're going to start falling more into alignment, more into your truth. And the universe will start bringing you synchronistic ways of bringing that into your life, right? Because you see, the more we start living in our truth, the more the universe, God, Allah, starts to bring more of that to you, right? Because it's in your being, in your being. So one of the other ways, of course, as well, of getting to know yourself, and thereby also love yourself. In my current sacred circle that I'm leading at the moment, which ends this month, the Ray of Light, I gave the ladies a task. And the task was to say what it is that is their absolute yes and their absolute no in every area of their lives. So, for example, socially, where and what and with whom is it an absolute yes that you would say yes to? Will you say yes to going clubbing, or is that a no for you? Would you say yes to going to a music concert and no or no? If it is a music concert, which genre is your yes and which genre is your no? If you're going to a restaurant, what ambience are you looking for? What environment, what type of food are you looking for? What is your yes and what is your absolute no? When you're looking at exercising, for example, what is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no? And the reason why, and you can carry this on in every facet of your life, what is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no? More often than not, people advise to look for what's your yes or to know what your yes is. But I find it important for you to know both sides. I find it important for you to also know your no, so that when your no arrives before you, it becomes easier, stress-free, and quite liberating also to be able to say, no, that's not for me. And I don't need to explain myself, right? For me, no is a full sentence. Maybe it's because it's the first two letters and half of my name, but no is a full sentence, right? So, and the reason why this came up in this circle and in this conversation was I had been asked. So it was interesting. It was happening like within the same month. One friend had asked for me to join a dance fitness class, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm definitely doing that. Yes, because I know I love dancing, and so a fitness class where dancing is concerned is not going to feel like a fitness class to me. It's just going to feel like joy, and so I wanted to experience that. Now, on the other hand, somebody else asked me to do a short and easy hike, right, in beautiful mountainous areas. Now, I love nature, but I don't necessarily hike. Not necessarily, I don't hike, period, right? And for a number of reasons, fear. I actually have a slight fear of heights. I don't always feel that my ankles are secure. And so I don't hike. You know, I've done it once. In fact, I did it once. This is quite cute, actually. I did it once many years ago, about 25 years ago, I think. And that's because I wanted to impress a guy. I married him, so I guess that worked. But I choose not to hike anymore, right? So it became quite easy for me to say, thank you for the invitation, but no, I don't hike, right? So, and there's no need to go on and say, oh no, I don't know how to explain this, or maybe I should go, or no, I just don't hike, period, right? It's as simple as that. Somebody would ask me, come, let's go and do this, or go there, or no, that's not my vibe. I don't do that vibe, and so therefore it's a no from me, right? So it becomes easier for us when we know exactly what our yes and our no is. And this is a journaling exercise. It's a checklist exercise to journal and find out for yourself what is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no. Through this journaling or through this exercise, you will start discovering more about yourself. Things that you may have not even acknowledged to yourself before about what is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no. And by the way, this exercise can actually go on forever and ever. I mean, how long is a piece of string and how much life do you have, right? Have you lived? And, God willing, you are still going to live. So there's a lot about you. I mean, you could take this into relationships, right? What is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no? It's a thing that I say to my single friends, right? Like they yearning for a relationship, for example, and I ask, so what's your list? I said, excuse me? I said, what's your list? What's your absolute yes and what's your absolute no? What's your deal breaker? What is the things that you want to feel and experience and to have about someone as a partner, and what is an absolute no? Because if you don't know that, you just calling in all the fish, right? So, and again, for those of us who do have partners, even in your intimacy, in your sexual relations, what is your absolute yes and what is your absolute no? Because if those things are not even expressed and discussed within your intimate relations, then what are you doing? This is something that, and I want to talk about this still in another episode, because I cannot, in this day and age, fathom why people are not having open communications about their intimacy and their sexual preferences in their intimate relations. So, as I said, this question can go on, right? This list can go on. It's quite deep. The other thing, and I'm looking on my phone because I actually just made a few notes. The other thing that I find very useful but also sometimes a lot of the time for those of us who are in our heads, right? And again, when I say for those of us that's in our heads, I am not laying blame at anyone for being in our heads. We all are. We all absolutely are in our heads. The challenge though is, and I think, maybe also understanding We come out of a society that has praised intellect, knowledge, learning in order to become and do and earn. And so this whole, going to school, getting a tertiary education, working your way up the corporate ladder, earning a living, getting a family, providing for the family, all of those things, it is, I almost wanted to say it's a trap, but it is. But beyond that, it is a societal norm that has been dictated to us that is the route that one must take. And so it becomes a very heady space to be in. We're constantly plotting and planning. We're constantly thinking. There's very little teachings that we may have had in mainstream, in our schooling system, even maybe in our religious systems, that has taught us how to be reflective, right? How to be mindful, how to be contemplative of our lives. The reflections and contemplation that we may have been taught before was more around, how do I figure out this problem to fix it, right? And that's not necessarily what reflection is and contemplation. Reflection and contemplation is, I just want to reflect on this. I want to observe how I feel, and I want to reflect on how I feel. I want to contemplate what this means in my life, and I want to contemplate what this means to me. So reflection and contemplation has got more to do with how you feel, potentially, and also the meanings behind those things, right? So for those of us who are potentially sitting more in our heads, through no blame to others or ourselves for that matter, it can screw us around from time to time because we are constantly mulling over things. We are constantly trying to figure things out in our heads. Of course, this is when we are not seeking help outside of ourselves, right? Again, with a friend the other day in conversation, I said to him, I'm going to recommend that you start mind dumping. Right? And he said, what do you mean? I said, you open up a book with a pen, actual physical. You can do this on a laptop or your phone. I prefer pen and paper though, because there's something in the motion of one's hands, particularly leading to one's heart, right? And so I asked him, can you start mind dumping? Take out pen and paper and just get out everything that is on your mind. It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to flow. It doesn't need to be grammatically correct. It doesn't need to be something that you now immediately need to work on. It doesn't need to be any of those things. The task at hand, though, is for you to take everything that is in your mind and take it out of your mind and place it before you. Now, why am I asking him to do this or recommending that he does this? You see, when we have got so much happening in our minds, we feel that we are in the situation constantly, right? In NLP, we call this association, right? We are associated with the problem. And so when the problem is swelling, we are also swelling, right? And therefore, we've got very little objectivity, right? But as soon as you start taking what is in your mind out of your mind and onto paper, automatically you've created the separation between yourself and the paper. And the paper is where your mind story is right now. So you actually have got now, and that in NLP, by the way, we call disassociation. When you've created that disassociation, now all of a sudden you've got objectivity. You can look at something objectively and say, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know I was thinking this. I didn't know that this was my constant narrative. I didn't know that this was my language use that I was using on myself. I didn't know that I was constantly sitting in the future. I didn't know that I was, bogged down by that thing in the past. I didn't know that I was reflecting so much on an incident that happened that I thought I was over. Right? So mind dumping is a very helpful experience in order for us to get to, feel less burdened. Actually, that's one of the great results about mind dumping. You feel less burdened, right? Because now you're not swirling anymore, right? you now can see it outside of yourself and actually take a look at it and say, okay, hold on, this I can deal with, right? One of, obviously, I may not need to state this, but I am still going to state it. Facing our hurt and our pain is one of the surefire ways of getting to know ourselves and getting to love ourselves, right? This is the recalibration. This is the unveiling. This is getting to know yourself. Does it mean that you need to sit every day and say, okay, where's my pain? Where's my pain? Where's my pain? No, right? Someone just asked me this morning, again in our sacred circle, and said, why do I keep experiencing this suffering in this particular area when I'm doing so much and basically bending over backwards trying to, do better? And I said, well, it's exactly that. You're bending over backwards, right? And when we bend over backwards, when we're over-pleasing, when we are doing, the proverbial or the metaphoric somersaults for someone else or other people or a group of people or an organization, we give our power away. And when we give our power away, we are limiting ourselves. Now, the problem isn't about giving our power away. That is one side, of course. The challenge comes in that we need to start questioning, why did I feel that I needed to do the somersaults? Why did I feel that I needed to bend over backwards to please this particular person or people or organization, right? Because when I discover that, my next question starts to come. What is this saying about me? What do I subconsciously and unconsciously believe is it saying about me? And where does that come from? Right? So that ability to start asking quality questions comes through facing our hurt and our pain. It is, and in fact, let me also just read this out to you, because I read this morning and it was just so beautiful, and I wrote a post about it on social media. It was a Rumi quote that I discovered this morning that I've never seen before, which is a rarity because I basically eat, breathe, and sleep Rumi. And the quote says, when inward tenderness finds the secret hurt, pain itself will crack the rock, and let the soul emerge. Now you see, there's so much in that little quote. When you become tender with yourself, i.e. vulnerable, right? When you become vulnerable, when you become willing to become vulnerable, to face yourself, that in and of itself is what brings about the light, right? Vulnerability is such a beautiful strength, right? And no, it doesn't mean that you need to overshare with others, right? Find the right spaces and the right people to be vulnerable with. But firstly, and most importantly, be vulnerable with you, with yourself. Be open with yourself. There was once a task that I took myself through. I discovered that again, from my sordid past and having gone through abuse, I had these labels that was attached to me that I felt so much shame about, right? I'm a bitch, I'm a whore, I'm a this, I'm a that. And I thought the only way for me to overcome this is not to prove that I am not those things, but it's to accept where I am those things. And so I found all of the ways in which I am a bitch, all of the ways in which I am a whore, all of the ways in which I am a slut, that serves me. Of course, in my marriage, right? And with my friends, that I'm I'm probably daily called a bitch in my friend group. and in a loving way. You see, that was a moment for me to be vulnerable with myself, for me to not run away from the labels and the titles that I perceive others has given me. I don't even know if others had given it to me. I thought, I perceived, right? And so I thought, the only way that I'm going to overcome this perception or the shame is to own it. You see, the beauty about shame is that when you own your own story, right, the story can't own you. Just think about that. So this quote was just so beautiful in that, in the tenderness, but the tenderness is also the ability to be gentle with yourself, the ability to approach yourself not with a vengeance or with force, but rather with this loving nature, right? I often challenge people and ask them, do you treat yourself the way you treat others? Like, do you really? Because sometimes we treat others with such grace and tenderness, and we neglect to treat ourselves with that same grace and tenderness. Right? So just, perhaps think about that. So yeah, facing ourselves and facing the hurt and the pain with vulnerability, and in truth, of course, because that's what the vulnerability is. To be able to focus on that or have that conversation in honesty is most important. And I'm going to land this here, but this is much bigger discussion. When we are looking at our vulnerability and looking at the pain and the hurt that we have in our lives, we'd be wise to start looking for where's the lesson in that pain, right? Now, I'm not going to delve into this now. This is a topic for another discussion. But there's always a lesson. There's always a message that is very, very unique to you and for you. Life is happening for you, not to you, right? It's quite literally happening for you. And if you know the ways in which to uncover and discover your lessons and the messages, those divine messages that only God is giving to you, your life just becomes this beautiful mosaic, a work of art that is constantly changing, that is constantly moving, that is constantly becoming more beautiful day by day. The other thing also about getting to know ourselves is catching patterns in our lives and questioning them, of course. If you see that there's a particular thing that keeps on happening, then you need to start questioning yourself. In fact, this happened to me yesterday where I obviously phoned a friend. I was like, I need help. Because I was thinking about this and I journaled about it. And then I was like, I'm still not getting to the crux of this. I need to talk it out with someone, because that's one of my ways. I need to talk it out with people or with someone trusted and skilled, of course. And so last night I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and I started explaining to her this pattern that I'm picking up. And this pattern was somewhat in the form of rejection. Again, this is one of my, and I say again, you may not know this, but rejection is one of my shadow aspects, right, of my soul self. So I know I'm always going to, not always, but there's a lot of times that I'm going to be dealing with rejection and worthiness, right? Those are my two shadow aspects. And so I discovered that, there were people that I had asked to meet up with, and I asked twice, and crickets, right? And I was like, that's interesting. And then somebody else, I also dropped a line, and we were having a chat. It's not as if I was out of the blue. We were having a chat, and I said, let's meet up, and crickets, right? So I was like, what did I do? You see, that's interesting. I'm asking, what did I do? Right? So interesting. The human nature is that we are constantly looking at, if something on the external with other people is going wrong, we all think, oh, what did I do? Right? We take on the blame ourselves, And there is really no blame either by yourself or with them, right? There's only a lesson. There is only ever a lesson. And so I had to have this conversation, or I had this conversation with this friend of mine, and she pointed out some of the things with me, and we went back, we looked for examples in my life before, and we looked at examples of where it was reversed, where I was, when somebody was asking me to meet up and I was like crickets, and then I got to the all-important resolution, which I now need to practice, right? And so the resolution isn't enough. The lesson isn't enough. I now need to practice that lesson, right? So that becomes important, and I'll have an opportunity, many times over coming soon, to be able to actually work and practice that experience. So patterns, things that are repeatedly happening in your lives, things that are repeatedly popping up for you, right? Somebody asked me one day, why do I keep on attracting the same guy? I'm like, that's a pattern, eh? The same type of person that you're really trying to break away from? The answer lies in, have you dealt and seen the lesson and the message in the first relationship? Because if you haven't, the universe is going to keep presenting you with the exact same type of person in order for you to learn the lesson. And the lesson isn't like, oh, you know what, I'm going to hit you on the hand and so now that you learn the lesson. No, the lesson is absolutely and categorically for your highest good. The lesson is always about you, by the way. It's not about someone else. Never about someone else. It is always about you because it's always helping you grow. So think about that. Of course, one of the other ways of getting to know yourself is seeking guidance from a guided teacher or coach. I'm not going to speak on this because I am one, and it's going to sound as if I'm marketing myself, and I don't want to. Not that I don't want to market myself. I don't want this to be that place, right? But for me, for example, I got such a beautiful gift the other day from a friend of mine, and I'm still bawling my eyes out. It's been 2 weeks already, and I'm still bawling my eyes out. Just the most profound and most thoughtful and meaningful gift. I had a song that was written about me and for me, and the lyrics were basically taken from the comments that my friend had found all over social media that he went scouring through. Now this for me is effort in someone loving me, which I was just gobsmacked about. But the words of this song is just so profound and so meaningful, and it's a tribute to me. And so it really blew my heart wide open. But in that moment, and when because I asked my videographer to create a music video out of it, and when she finished the music video, I posted it all over social media, but I sent it to 2 other people in particular. One, I sent it to my family with particular mention to my parents, right? This entire tribute to me cannot happen without the people who have contributed to me directly, right? So any tribute to me is a tribute to them. And so indeed, anything that someone says about me is a tribute to my parents. I have amazing parents. And may Allah bless my mother with the greatest and highest station in Jannah. Ameen. She's no longer with us. My father, may he be blessed with many healthy years. He's my pukkel bear. So I sent this with particular mention, and the other person that I sent it to was my teacher, Dr. DiMartini. And in the message to him, again, I'm stating how this came about, and I said to him, I am because of you and many other mentors and teachers, but I am because of you. So any tribute that comes to me is a tribute to you, so thank you. This is for both of us, right? I mean, this is just a knock-on effect. So your teachers and your guides and your coaches are really there to help you become more of who you are, right? And for me, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but my teachers aren't on a pedestal for me. but I deeply revere them. I respect them. I cherish them. I laugh with them. I joke with them. But they are dear to me because of how they've made me grow. And I'll never forget that. Right? So, and then of course asking quality questions, which some of them I've gone through here again, but why me is not a quality question, hey, by the way. So, and if the more you can stay away from the why question, the better off you are. If you're asking what questions, how, when, in what way, right? Those questions are the ones that is going to bring you to the specificities around what is truly bothering you. The why question, unfortunately, why is actually designed to bring out meaning, right? And often when you bring out a why question first, meaning comes with stories, right? It comes with a tale, you know. Oh, why are you feeling like that today? Oh, let me tell you. That's how it goes. So why questions are not for first off questions when you're trying to deal with something in your life. It must be what, how, when, in what way, right? Why questions comes in after you've delved through all of those what, when, how, wow, where, right? Only afterwards. Because what you don't want is, you don't want to start off with a story. Because as soon as you start off with a story, the tale itself, you get engrossed in it and you get entangled in it. And then it becomes something that you are, so immersed in that you can't get yourself out of, right? So be mindful of that. And then, of course, the all-important prayer, dhikr, and meditation, right? So, I'm going to be the first person to say, if you are using your prayer and meditation and dhikr, for example, to gain an outcome, right, you're doing it wrong, okay? And the reason why I say that is the first stages of particularly meditation, for example, meditation is to rest into your being. It's to let go of this, scattering in our minds and just to rest into your being, to recalibrate your nervous system, to get back to breath, right, which is your fundamental, your most fundamental part of your essence is your breath, right? I'm not an advocate, and I never will be probably, I can't say never, but yeah, of using meditation for an outcome, especially for beginners, right? Meditation must be used to literally just rest. That is an outcome. Let that be your outcome. But, future pacing, finding the future, those are all valuable, but not in the beginning stages, right? As far as your prayer is concerned, however you do your prayers, whether that is, conversations with God, whether that is congregational prayers, going to church, going to mosque, going to temple, going to the shul, whether that is, you actually sitting on your prayer mat, or you're doing your ritual prayer, your 5 times a day, I'm going to challenge and ask you, how do you connect first to your heart before you start your prayer? Or do you use your prayer in order to get into your heart? Right? If you're using your prayer to get into your heart, there's nothing wrong in that. But I'm going to ask you to test the theory and first get into your heart and then do your prayers. Right? As far as the dhikr is concerned, and for those of you who don't know what dhikr is, dhikr by translation or definition loosely is remembrance of God, right? We can use beads like prayer beads, but we can use our hands. We could just use our voice. We actually don't need to count if we didn't need to, right? But anyway, we do. And dhikr is, for me, most meaningful and most life-changing when we have, firstly, intellectually understood what we are saying, right? So, for example, if I'm saying Alhamdulillah, I'm saying all praise be to God. And for me to first sit in contemplation and reflection and say, what does it mean to me? When I say all praise be unto God, what do I mean? Not what does it mean. What do I mean? What do I mean when I say all praise is truly unto God? Like it's nowhere else. You know, if I say Subhanallah, glory be to God, like what does glory mean to me? And when I give God the glory, in what ways do I give him the glory? Right? In what ways? When I say Shukriya Allah, I'm saying thank you God. Right? Like where in my body is that? Like when I'm saying thank you, Shukriya Allah, is it coming from here that I'm saying, oh, thank you? Right? In my head? Or is it in my heart space where I'm sitting deeply, like I've gone to the deepest crevice of my heart that I possibly could go to? Right? And now in that space I'm saying, Shukriya Allah. Shukriya Allah. Shukriya Allah. In that moment, when you are in the deepest crevice of your heart and you are now giving thanks to God, oh my word, it changes you. It changes you. And those are just like, short dhikr's. I mean, there's longer dhikr's, which again, sometimes you don't need to understand. You could just be in your heart and you will be moved because the words are, it's as if it's seeping through you, right? But again, what I'm also trying to get at, don't pull your prayer beads for the sake of pulling your prayer beads, right? Pull your prayer beads with intentionality, right? With everything that you say, with every dhikr that you make, with every bead that you pull, feel that into your heart. With every bead that you pull, feel as if you're going deeper and deeper into your heart, right? Because that's where God resides. So, I'm going to leave that there today. I've more applications, but we'll talk about more of them as we go along in other topics as well. Let's not overburden this one. I'm not even sure how long I've been online. Thank you so much for those of you who've been joining me every week. Thank you. It's been a blast doing this. And yeah, you can find us everywhere. And if you have any questions that you'd like me to address, any questions that you have, some burning questions, feel free to message me. Feel free to comment down below, and even to send me an email. And I'd be happy to consider it. If it's in my ambit of knowledge or knowing, then I will happily share it. So thank you so much for being here. All my love and blessings. May the peace and blessings be unto you today and always. And that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Sufficient Podcast with me, Noha. Be sure to tune in next time for more soul reflections right here. Also follow me in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss the next episode. And also please feel free to engage with me in the comments below. You will find the links to all my social media handles and email address in the description box below. And of course, most importantly, if you feel the content can be helpful to someone you know, please share it with them. Right. That's it. I'm out. This has been the Sufficient Podcast, and I'm your host, Noha. Thank you for listening. Until next time, peace and blessings be unto you.